Was over to here we are. Common sense perspective. All right. Usually I have a splash intro and all that when if you're watching my crypto channels, but something different here that I've been doing as in the past week. Or I started doing this common sense perspective channel, and basically it's a nonpartisan sharing with you my thoughts on everything without being left or right dedicated. But I have to say I'm leaning more towards the right just because it's more common sense. But anyhow, stepping away from politics and stuff, right? I wanted to look at what strikes a chord in me all the time. Every time I see, you know, news about Bud Light and all that stuff, because the reason why is that um, I used to work for a Budweiser distributor as my old job, and then a couple years into it, I realized that let's see, I got 5 years into it, and I realized, man, I don't want this to be my future, you know. And so, with all that, it was like, I got to look for something more. And so, as time went on, I started to look into law enforcement and things like that. And I felt like that's the future I wanted to go to. 5 years into my Budweiser, career, working at a distributor, and I'll have to say at first it was cool because it was cool working for a beer company, and you're going out there doing sales and in a sense advertisement, and just doing that, right. And it was a cool gig at first, but as time went on, especially when there were times of a slowdown in the economy or whatever like that, the it becomes a hustle, right. And as it becomes more of a hustle and grinding, they put more on you. They put more on you, put more on you. And all I can say is every time we have business meetings and stuff, they say, "Oh, I know that there's a lot on your plate right now, but," and then they add more stuff, right? Even though they say that. And each supervisor that has something new or something to attach to our current workload, they always say the same thing. I know you guys have a lot on your plate, but this. I know you have a lot on your plate, but, and it's like a constant, you know, shit, bullshit, right? To the point where, when you look at what we get, right, we get salary because it's considered a manager position. So you get salary and incentives, right? No overtime money. So, for example, I put a shit ton of overtime, never got paid for it because we're on salary. So what you want to do is you want to get paid you want to work minimally so that way you can work within the confines of 8 hours, which was impossible. But early in the career, it was cool because I would have to say the way they had things set up, it was good, right? To where you could be literally done in 4 hours, 4 or 5 hours, and if you're done for the day, you're done for the day, right? But then they started to work you more and more and more. They add more and more and more to the point where you were no longer doing that. You'd be lucky to get a day like that. But instead, you're working 8 hours to 10 hours. Holidays, you could easily work 12 hours, right? On the buildup of a holiday. But anyhow, it struck a chord in me because I've been out of this thing for years now, but because the demands are stupid, the pay is low, and it's just ridiculous. They treat their drivers, which in a sense, I mean, there was always a debate: the drivers or the sales guys. Who was the backbone of the company, right? I mean, it's a team effort, but at the same time, you do the orders, they got to deliver it, right? Because if we don't do the orders, well, they can't deliver it, right? So um, the problem with that is that they treat their drivers better. I mean, they treated their drivers real good, almost like with pillows and cushions and all that. Soften the blows every time. To where, for example, they get paid hourly, and they try to minimize their overtime, And if there was overtime, then there's overtime, right? But they try to minimize that, which is fine. I'm good with that. I don't give a shit, right? And on top of that, you know, all they do basically is dropping loads, right? All they do is go drop loads. They have someone that'll go right behind them to put it all away. So how easy is that, right? To the point where, yeah, they were targeted for money, and so with targeted money, what happens? Well, because it's their easy target, right? When crime started to get out of control, when it comes to strong arm robberies and things like that in general, what do they say? Oh, guys, sales guys, you're gonna have to go pick up the money now, right? So they, so rather than to take the targets off of them, so they almost like, all right, now let's just move the target onto us. So not only we had to do the hustle and grinding, work 8 to 10 hours daily, we had to go back and pick up money from these guys too, whether it's cash, checks, whatever like that. What kind of bullshit is that, right? So I said I got to get out of this shit. All right. I guess I'm just telling you a quick story of my life. um, and then the last straw. This was the last straw. So supervisor came up. All right. A position to be a supervisor. And as the supervisor came up, that was an opportunity to interview for it, right? And those were rare opportunities to interview for supervisors. So, when there's an opportunity to go for it, shit, I'm going. I went for it, right? And never got a call or nothing, right? So I called my boss, because I had my own direct supervisor, and then there was a sales manager. So I talked to the sales. I bypassed my boss, my supervisor, because a lot of times I think he kisses that ass to the owners, and like in a way he acts like he looks out for you, but he really looks out for himself more. So that's why I went above him and I went to the sales manager and I said, "Hey, what's going on here?" Because I applied for an interview, submitted my information 1 week early, or not on the deadline, 1 week early, right? And never got an interview for it, right? Because I heard they went through second round of interviews, and I'm like, what's going on here? So he's like, that's kind of weird. It's unacceptable. Let me look into that, right? So he calls HR. HR calls me back and says that, oh, we never received your thing. I'm like, no, that's impossible because I sent it a week ago. She says, all right, let me contact IT to see if they could, see if there was something wrong with my stuff, my computer, whatever. Troubleshoot, right? And then the next thing you know, they call me back. Oh, we found your resume. Yeah, whatever, right? Oh, we found it. Yeah, how inconvenient was that, right? Even though I turned in a week early. And then they say, well, we have to apologize, but we've already gone through our second round of interviews, and there's nothing we can do about it. I mean, I know that your resume came in. They didn't even give me a chance to even try to interview, just because of their mistake, right? So I get skipped over that. To me, that was the writing on the wall. I got to get out, and I just got out of that. Soon, man, literally, I got word from law enforcement. I got picked up. Bam, there I am, and left. I was like, I'm out of this shit. But anyhow, the reason why I talk about Bud Light is because I saw news about a week ago. It struck a chord in me, right? Because every time I see stuff about Bud Light, like the Dylan Mulvaney, I just laugh, and kind of makes you wonder, like, what has been made about my old company and all that. And so with that, yeah, so the whole Dylan Mulvaney thing, I know, sorry that I worked my story into it, but the Dylan Mulvaney thing, right, where that vice president of marketing decided to come in and wanted to change things up from traditional means of Bud Light marketing and all that. She says, she wanted to change the image because she's woke, right? And she said, "Oh, I wanted to get away from the fratty image of what it was and all that." Which, I mean, for years and years and years, that's what was the identity of Bud Light, right? The fun, the games, the you know number one beer in the market, and it was fun, right? And so, but why in the world would you want to switch things up, change things up, and all that stuff? Hey, beats me, right? So it got so bad, right, last year with this whole Bud Light stuff, right? That during the past year, since last year, Modelo, which was in our house too, by the way, at my distributor. Modelo, when I was at my company, the top three beers, I'll just say top five beers in our house was number one was Bud Light, number two was Budweiser, number three was Corona, and then Modelo, right, and then Sierra Nevada, right. So those were like the top five beers in my house, right, in our company, in our region, Northern California. I would say Contra Costa County, Northern California region. All right, so with that, looking at what happened, man, as years went on, this is like got to be 10 plus years since the time I was in Budweiser. Um, Modelo has taken over as the number one beer in the U.S. All right, that's pretty cool. Yeah, Modelo was a rising star when I had it in our house. Like it was a rising star. It was going to surpass Corona in due time, and and Budweiser has been slipping for years. They slipped out of the number one spot as Budweiser was number one beer for ages, and then they slipped out of the number one spot to Bud Light. I forgot when, sometime in the early 2000s. I don't know. And then when you look at Corona's always been consistently there, and then Modelo just was a rising star. So with the marketing and all that, Bud Light was number one until it got taken over due to the terrible advertising campaign they did. And even Michelob Ultra has overtaken Bud Light in the number two spot, which is shocking because I remember when Michelob Ultra first came out, and it was like, all right, you already have Bud Light. Now you're gonna go something with something that's lighter, right? And it was lighter. People say it's like drinking water, right? That's what they compared drinking Michelob Ultra to. And so even Ultra has taken over, which is shocking to me because for years and years and years we would have Ultra go out of date. We would have to swap it out and write it off, and it was constant that we had to continue to do that with Michelob Ultra. I never thought it would go anywhere, but hey, look what happened, right? So when you look at all that, Modelo has taken over, and then Michelob Ultra has went ahead of them, which is shocking. And just behind, Bud Light, they're still on their necks, on their tails is Coors Light, Miller Light, on their tails, right? Because they picked up the slack for all the lost Bud Light sales too, which was what we looked at that time. So yeah, but yeah, every time I see it, they were talking about how Bud Light slips again. I mean, falling behind, and you thought it would be the end of it, but man, it's not. It just keeps falling, which is funny as hell. Um, because you thought that now that we've gotten away from that whole advertising campaign, and still, still, Bud Light is still being effective. So it makes me think about my old company, and I'm like, let me see. There we go. So yeah, so more than a year after Bud Light had the transgender influencer, continues to lose competition. So Bud Light was like the bread and butter of my company back then, and I just wonder how they're handling all that now. It just kind of makes you wonder uh, how are things looking now. Since Bud Light was already kind of slowing down, right, in a little bit during that time. But then, man, Bud Light, all right, decided to well, the marketing person here, Elisa Heinerscheid, just killed the brand. I mean, there's no way she shouldn't have not been fired. She should have been fired, man, to destroy a company. So you look at the top 10 U.S. beer brands, right? You got Corona there, Coors Light. Like I said, those two are on their tails. Budweiser's in a tailspin for years. They're probably going to fall off top 10 eventually at some point, because people are just moving on to the light. I mean, look at it. Outside of Modelo and Corona, one, two, three, four, five, six, seven different light beers. Well, High Life's not light, but six different light beers. All right, on here. I think Budweiser's going to fall off at some point, and the rest is history. What else is going to rise? Uh, in terms of, I mean, they even have like Modelo Light, Corona Light, Corona Zero, Modelo Ore, which is zero, right? So they're catering to the light people, right? So that's what they got here. And see how when you go woke, you go, DI, ESG, whatever, all that bullshit. You see, this is evidence of what happens when you go woke, you go broke, right? And so, it's one thing if you have leadership is fine, because the boss of my company was female president, hot, by the way, of my company, and daughter's hot too. um, and it's like, hey, it is what it is. But yeah, this is what happens. Look at Target. All right, Target, for example, they went woke and went broke. They went from, hey, all stores doing Pride Month, whatever. At first it was in the front of the store, then put it to the back of the store. To this year, right? This past year for Pride, what did Target do? They left it as an option for stores. If they decided to carry the Pride line, they could do that this year, but they're not forced to carry a Pride line. So people have made changes to cater to it, right? But then when you see something like that, then what else? Then what do you see, right? You see bullshit like I'm not trying to be mean or nothing, but you start to see bullshit like, for example, the opening ceremony of 2024 for the Last Supper. I mean, it was a shocking, right, thing because of how it was set up. If you don't know what happened with the opening ceremony, it was like pride slash transgendered, cross dressing, however you want to call it, opening ceremony of the Last Supper, right, for the Olympics. So the organizers who okayed it, I don't know, must have been drinking or something to be approving it, because who would have thought they're dumbasses, whoever, you know, here we go. So Paris Olympics opening ceremony faces backlash over alleged Last Supper parody. So they created an event, a real event, all right, by real religious people. That happened, right? Jesus' Last Supper. To a parody on an opening ceremony of the Olympics, which has 7 rings to represent, the 7 continents across the world, right? To unite for the Olympic Games, right? To compete with one another for who's going to be the best, right? So it's a worldwide thing. To do a parody of the Last Supper, all right? And then, how can you not expect to face blowback, right? I mean, obviously the Olympics, all right, the Olympics went woke now, all right? So they went woke, and it's just weird because, when you look at how everything goes woke, what happens? It goes broke, right? It goes bad. And when you're trying to force something upon people, it's not a good thing, right? Because you basically want to do the opposite. If you're being forced to do something, you want to do the opposite. All right, so that's the thing about it. So, opening ceremony faced criticism from Iraqi churches for a segment that appeared to mock the Christian religion. Well, yeah. So, of course, the Christians are insulted. The Iraqi churches there, as you can see, were insulted. Um, I mean, what do you expect? Because you're taking a real event that happened to, mock it or make it a parody on a, opening ceremony of the Olympics, something that's seen by millions of people across the world, right? To do all that. And again, I think the committee or organizers or whatever that developed that must have been drinking the whole time. They must have been drinking straight through from development to the practicing to we're going to make a difference and show the world, all that stuff to where, put it out there for everybody to see. I don't know what they were expecting out of that, right? What were you expecting out of that to have, you know, the drag queens parody it, right? It just didn't make sense. So of course people would be insulted, and especially when you're trying to force pride, drag queens, transgender, all that stuff upon people. All right, because in the end, it's a matter of choice, power of choice, and people, it's already at a point where there's acceptance, right? And if they don't, then you ignore them, right? But to force people to accept and accept and accept, it's going to make people turn the other way in general, just in general of everything. Now, you don't have to agree with what I'm saying about it, but because you can always agree to disagree with me. But to see all this, right, to make a mockery of the Last Supper, right, it's really going to rub people the wrong way. And that's just common sense, right? Common sense is that when you're forcing, these sort of things to happen, the whole DEI stuff, the whole woke stuff, like, of course, people are not going to react well to it. That was my whole point with the Bud Light thing, right? And Target, for example, as another meant to that, all the way to the opening games of the ceremony of the Olympics. Like, what do you expect out of that? I mean, like, and so of course, what do they do? Oh, we apologize. We didn't know it was going to be offensive. Well, shit. Because there's probably, when you look at the population as a whole in the world, to do that, it's really of a mockery to the people of the world because it's still slowly gaining acceptance of, being openly, whatever you want to be, gay, transgender, drag, all that stuff, right? Being the opposite of who you are. It's still a work in progress. So, which is nothing wrong with that. It's a work in progress, but to force it upon people is never a good idea. All right? And so, because it just creates a Pandora's box. And all it does is it'll just create more and more and more backlash and trouble than what it really needs to be. Right? So, they apologize for the snafu. So how's that a snafu if it was planned, right? Stuff like that. It's just funny how you come up with excuses now. It's like, well, what do you expect? Um, but yeah, so people are insulted by that. I've always been. I don't take like when it comes to being insulted. It's like for me, I'm never really insulted. Like about anything. I have thick skin, and there's really nothing to be insulted about. In general, in life. So just keeping that in mind. All right, and letting you know my thoughts about everything. Because I saw the Bud Light thing, and then it kind of just parlayed its way to this whole opening ceremony thing. So I just wanted to share with you my thoughts on that. Let me know what you think. You like being forced to acceptance of things in general? Do you like be forced to accept pride? Right? You know that pride, for example, has a flag, right? And it's like, why do you need a flag to represent yourself? All right? When you're representing, when you look at it, to represent more of a identity, right? Usually flags are about the nation, but from what I've seen, that's the only one that has more of an identity than anything. So I don't know, just the thought. So I just wanted to share with you the thoughts. Let me know what you think about all that, and a little short story as well. So yeah, share me your thoughts. Common sense tells me that hey, don't force this stuff on people. All right, because it's either gonna people accept or they don't, right? But as long as nobody's hurt, that's the common sense approach. Just saying. All right, um, but don't force it on people. All right. So other than that, comment down below. Let me know what you think. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.